Hey everybody, Zee Garcia here, and today we're traveling to Australia for a kangaroo contest for 2 players in this game, Kang. This game is a reprint and a re-theme of an abstract game that came out more than 30 years ago called Gyges, or Gyges. It depends how you want to say it, but I say Gyges. And that game has a couple of rules differences from this one as well. And like I said, it was completely abstract. But the core system, that main mechanism of getting your pieces across, of jumping on other pieces or swapping pieces, is all the same thing. Now, main differences here, before I get to the overview, are that in this one, your pieces start off the board. In the original game, they begin in your back line, and that you have to get out 3 pieces. In the original one, it was a single piece. If you did that, you won the whole thing. So let's go ahead and take a look at it so you know what I'm talking about here, and then we'll come on back and I'll tell you what I think of this one. The players are going to take turns back and forth until someone scores 3 goals, represented by these tokens here, the alfalfa tokens. Whoever has 3 of these first is going to be the winner of the game. Each player begins with 6 pieces in front of them. You're going to have 2 size 1 pieces, 2 of the size 2 pieces, and 2 of the large ones, size 3 pieces. And you pick a star player, you're ready to go. So on your turn, you need to move a piece on the board. If you have no pieces on the board, you're going to have to introduce one. And in fact, if you have any that are still in your reserve, you have to introduce one, because one of the rules in the game is that you must make a move with one of the pieces that is closest to you. If you have any off the board, those are the closest to you. When you make a move, you are going to pick a piece and you are going to move it as many spaces on the board as the size of the piece. So the very first move for me could be 1, 2, for example, and I'll leave that there. Then my opponent would go and they might do 1, 2, 3. They could turn 1, 2, 3. You can do that however you want to. You can just not cross the same line more than once. So they could not do 1, 2, 3. That would not be okay. If they wanted to get there, of course, they could always do 1, 2, 3. Right? And then it comes back to me and I'll play one of these pieces. Another rule is if you land on a piece with your last move, you can do one of 2 things. And here, for example, I'm talking about doing this. 1, 2. On top of this one. 1, 2. I have to either jump on the kangaroo that is there, or I can punch that kangaroo. If I jump on it, I am going to, using the same piece I've been moving, make another move based on the size of that one. So if I did that, I would go 1, 2, and then jump 1, 2, for instance. Okay, I could do that. The other option is punching it, which is 1, 2, and then I punch the one below, I leave the one I've been moving there, and I move this one anywhere I want to on the board, as long as I don't make it closer than the closest one my opponent has, i.e., I don't force them to move this one on their next turn. So I could punch that one and put this there, for example. And then it'll be their turn. Everything you are doing here is with the purpose of having one of the kangaroos you are moving exit on the opponent's side of the board. So for example, let's say that our setup looks like this, and that, okay? This is what our board looks like, and my opponent over there is going to take a turn. They're going to choose a 3-piece. They're going to start here. They're going to go 1, 2, 3. They're going to jump off of this one. 1, 2, 3. Jump off of this one. 1, 2. Jump off of this one. 1, 2. And they are going to score 1 token. A piece that they just exited from the board is going to go in my reserve. I'll be allowed to enter that piece on my next turn. And they are going to take one of the alfalfa tokens here. Now, one of the rules is you cannot, after having scored a goal, scored another one on your very next turn. So what I like to do is take the token and just put it on the lip of the board here somewhere to remind me of that rule. And then after the next turn, then I move it off of there so that I know I can now score again. So my opponent has scored, it comes back to me, and I could, of course, now go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Or I could have done 1, 2, 3, punch that, and so on. 1, 2, okay? So it goes back to them. They cannot enter a piece all the way into my goal, so they might play there, and then they can move that off. Again, that's just a little thing I like to do. And it comes back to me, and I'm going to go 1, like so. Then it's their turn, and they're going to go 1, 1. Do they want to do that? They're going to go 1, 1, 2, and stop. They have to stop. Comes back to me. I might go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, and enter that one, giving it to them. Take this one, put it there. And this is going to continue again until someone gets 3 of these, and then the game is completely over. So that's all there is to it. It's a very simple game. Sometimes you do end up creating a path that is going to allow for players to score on each other continuously. So you have to be mindful of that. It becomes a very quick scoring opportunity at that point. You're going to have to try to punch something out of that chain if the other player is winning that race. So if they'll get to 3 before you get to 3. But other than that, you've seen everything there is to see here. So let's go back up top, and let me tell you what I think of it. Alright, so let me give you some final thoughts on this one. I will say I have played the original game, 10 years ago, and I thought it was an interesting game, but even back then, it was not one of my favorite abstracts. I thought it was extremely punishing. It was extremely quick. Any little mistake or anything you did not notice would be the end of you, and the game just felt unsatisfactory. It was more like building a puzzle that the opponent, if they noticed something you didn't, boom, the game would be immediately over. It was way too brutal. I do like this better, but it's still not going to be a glowing review, okay? So let's break it down. I'm going to start with the theme, which I think is a great improvement on the original package. Theme gets a thumbs up. The kangaroo theme here actually makes a lot of sense. The idea of, jumping over a kangaroo and then bouncing off of that one, or punching, right? The original rules, of course, did not use the punching terminology, but it makes a lot of sense in this game, and so I do like the theme here. The aesthetics. There are very few components in this one, but they are well made. They're not as well made as the version I happened to have played on of Gyges, but they're still well done, bright, colorful. The theme here and the look combined make for a very appealing looking game, and that's to be commended. The replayability I still find to be very low. This is the kind of game that after a few plays, you'll simply find yourself doing the same things. I don't find myself driven to bring this back to the table after I've played it a couple of times. I sort of put it out of my head and just really forget about it. Game length is still very good. I know some folks online especially were saying that this one increased the play length outside of what they were hoping for, a 15-minute game or so. I actually think 15 minutes is about right for this one. I mean, it seems to play in about 15, 20 minutes, whereas the original one sometimes wouldn't break 10, right? So I like it. I actually don't mind that you have to score 3 points. It gives the game a little more happening. You bounce a piece out, and then it goes to your opponent. That's interesting. Unfortunately, because of there now being, you know what, I'll talk about that in rules. Come back to that. So there you go, replayability, thumbs down. Game length, I really like it. Like I said, 15 minutes, 20 minutes is the way to go with this one. It's usually really short. Ease of play. Okay, now because of the idea that you have to get pieces out more than once, they had to add a few rules in. Things like, you can't score immediately after you scored. Okay, that's, again, one extra rule to sort of keep in mind in a game that is so simple. The rules are fine. I did not necessarily have a problem with them, but I did find that they had to add a couple of things in order to make the game a little longer and therefore a little more fulfilling, let's call it. Have a little more oomph and be more memorable, which it did, but they had to add a couple of little rules to something that was already so streamlined that even 1 or 2 extra rules is a considerable percentage of the rules in the game. Lastly, tactics and strategy. There are some neat traps here to be set up, right? The game play, the feel of the game in a bubble is interesting. This idea of, oh, okay, I can move my guy in, and then if I land on that piece, he bounces. That's neat. I like that. The way it plays, though, is ultimately not very satisfactory, and so I find the tactics and strategy to sort of be middle of the road, and it's still pretty punishing. And there's also the idea that once you've set up a traversal lane, if your opponent does not break that up, you will just continue doing the same thing. It's that's obvious, and they should, but it's still not as engaging. Basically, the first half of this game is much more interesting than the second half. It's seeing where I can go safely for me, that gets me across without getting you across with the pieces you have. And that's all front-loaded. That's the first half of the game. After that, where all the pieces, or most of them, are in play, I'm just sort of repeating things I've already done in order to get across, do it again, I win. So that's what I mean. It's just sort of like, tugging the puzzle this way or that as opposed to building the puzzle. So there you go. My bottom line is as follows. A bit better than the original game, now with an appealing theme, but still not one of my favorite abstract designs. This is going to get a 5 out of 10 from me. It's not a horrible game, like I said. And if you enjoy the look of it, if you are looking for a quick abstract game that is still very thinky, and really, much thinkier than this would lead you to believe, then you could still check it out. It's not a broken game. This has years behind it, right? There's a reason this is still around. But for me, I just find there is not a spark of fun in the game, and therefore it just doesn't, I don't find it to be a really fantastic, enjoyable, and fun abstract game. So there you go. That is Kang. Thanks everybody for checking this out. I'm Zee Garcia. I'll see you on the next one.
Thanks so much for watching another Dice Tower video. If you enjoy our videos, subscribe to the channel for more fun, comprehensive board game coverage. Also, consider joining us at one of our events. Come to Dice Tower Retreat, a small, intimate gathering where gaming is king. Join us for Dice Tower Cruise, the largest board game cruise. Attend Dice Tower West in Las Vegas for gaming fun on the West Coast, or Dice Tower East in Orlando in sunny Florida. Dice Tower Conventions, the friendliest gaming conventions on Earth. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.